Após a palestra, abriremos para o debate. Mas antes, quero apresentar... Como apresentar? How to introduce Nicole Belayache? I don't know.
You don't.
No, just a little bit. A Nicole Belayache, além de minha musa inspiradora, é diretora de pesquisa da Escola Prática de Altos Estudos de Paris, membro do ANIMA, né? E na Escola Prática da seção de Ciências Religiosas. Eu destaco especialmente um grupo de pesquisas europeu, um grupo europeu de pesquisas que Nicole dirigiu durante alguns anos, há poucos anos atrás, chamado Figura para Nós, que trabalhava a representação do divino nos mundos grego e romano. Mais recentemente, a Nicole vem trabalhando com estudos de cultos de mistério, né, no programa Cronos, que é a cronologia das evoluções religiosas, mas especialmente o Figurá foi um dos pontos centrais, as publicações, para o início até do meu projeto, do projeto do Federico, do nosso projeto coletivo Images of the Gods. Okay? É uma das nossas bases fundamentais. As publicações de Nicole Belayache, versam sobre duas problemáticas principais: a imagem das figuras divinas e a prática religiosa, e as trocas, os contatos religiosos num período helenístico e romano pelo Mediterrâneo. Eu agradeço muito a sua presença aqui. É uma grande alegria, um grande prazer. Entendeu? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for your introducing words. Claudia has many qualities. And one of the main is that when she speaks Portuguese, I have the impression that I understand. But I shall speak in English, of course. I warmly want to thank Claudia Beltrao and Federico Santangelo for their invitation and magnificent hospitality in this colloquium, the more so on such a fascinating topic, highly demanding in terms of rigorous method. It is very impressive to open this international meeting. I guess I owe the honor to the fact that my research, as Claudia just said, focuses on all kinds of rituals, and I had been working on images figuring rituals and on the dialogue between textual and visual evidence for many years. Recently, in a research program on mysteries, Claudia talked about that, I had with a colleague, Francesco Massa, I tackled the issue of images of mysteries, and indeed, figuration have a lot to say after the visual turn that provided us with new tools for interpreting images in general, and images of mysteries in particular. The topic of images of mystery rituals is puzzling for two reasons at least. First, the reality of mystery cults itself remains a vexed question because of the secrecy ban that is the core component of mystery cults. They are mystikoi, secret, by definition. Crypsis, says Strabo. Therefore, the same interdiction might be applied to the visual language. Moreover, images of mysteries, or rather images scholars identify as figuring images, can be found in various kinds of buildings, connected or not with cult places. The most famous being the so-called Villa of Mysteries at Pompeii, and its well-known scholarly debate about the identification. Images and visuality were everywhere in both Greek and Roman words. Thus, the first challenge is that of identification of images being actual images of mystery scenes. This question enters within the larger problematic of the relationship between ancient religions and images that is at the center of our colloquium. The second difficulty is that the visual language is not straightforward. It has its own semiotic rules and metaphorical settings that have to be deciphered for understanding the message conveyed by images, what Richard Gordon already mentioned, called the opacity of iconography. When searching for mysteries in images, the focus is not on all the sequences of the festival, generally with processions, sacrifices, and other regular ritual practices, as in Eloises, for instance, but only on what happened in the mystery or initiation sequence, the concealed stage of the festival. For Eloises, it is clearly identified in a letter of the Emperor Commodus after he had entered into the Eumolpides family. Ta aporeta tes katata mysteria teletes, the secret rites of the initiation during the mysteries. For that reason, it cannot exist descriptions of these mysteric rituals, as Pausanias asserts when he arrives at the Eleusinian sanctuary. My dream forbade the description of the things within the wall of the sanctuary, and the uninitiated are, of course, not permitted to learn which they are prevented from seeing. Thus, my presentation will be divided in two parts. The first one will present general reflections on the religious nature of mysteries and mystery cults, on the impact of the visual turn on the study of images of mysteries, starting as expected, I guess, with the way from how Franz Cumont used images for deciphering what he named the Mithraic doctrine, and objects that might play the role of signs or semiotic markers for telling mysteries in images. The second part will focus on some images in a specific mystery cult, images of initiation in the Mithraic cult. Basically, mysteries designate religious practice that is kept secret by initiates. They offer diverse accounts depending upon the perspective they are considered, either political, philosophical, or sociological. Far from being rites outside the religion of the cities, mysteries are envisioned as a specific way of practicing religion, as Strabo reminds us. Now, this is common both to Greek and to the barbarians to perform their sacred rites in connection with the relaxation of a festival, these rites being performed sometimes with religious frenzy, sometimes without it, sometimes with music, sometimes not, sometimes in secret, sometimes openly. Yet, and through centuries, the term encompassed also a large range of conceptions, like beliefs in getting close to the divine, and a kind of knowledge that is not reachable through the common ways of daily rituals and dialectic reasoning. The use of a mysteric lexicon or imaginaire spread in literature of the Roman period from the end of the 1st century onwards, a trend we propose with Francesco Massa to designate as a mysterization, and that in historiography, mysteries were coined as a major feature of religious evolutions during the Roman Empire. Firstly, evidence on mysteries, mysteria, display discourses on what is known by all or reserved to few, what has to be concealed, though many know of it, like in Eloises, what is shown or hidden, what is said or unsaid, what is deliberately presented until under veiled garments, for whom follows the Plutarchian philosophical perspective of a mysteriodes theologia, a theology such as is found in mysteries ceremonies. In it, what is spoken is less clear to the masses than what is unsaid. And what is unsaid gives cause for more speculation than what is said. I cut. Nothing does more to reveal what was in the mind of the ancients than the rites of initiation and the ritual acts, ta dromena, that are performed in religious services with symbolic intent. Plutarch invites us here to register under mysteries all kinds of reserved and concealed ceremonies, whatever the content of these ceremonies was. Finally, a sociological perspective modeled after contemporary sectarian movements in America, North and South America indeed, stresses on delineations working as opposite couples for groups organized according to a strict hierarchy with specific links between the initiates. So the couples, knowledge, ignorance, with consequences on hierarchy within groups according to progressive initiations, like in Mitras, insiders, outsiders, visible, invisible, revelation, concealment. Such a peculiarity in terms of hidden evidence and religious complexity explains probably why mystery cults, considered firstly as religion by historiography, prompted such a rich amount of studies and scholarly debates on their nature, contents, purposes, up to their historicity to some, notwithstanding a model of late pagan cults as being mystery cults. Starting from a broad etymological perspective, the more common lexicon for expressing mysteric matters is frequently connected to the seeing, as in the Eleusinian title Hierophantes suggests, and possibly to things or images seen during the experience. Into the most sacred rites, she infused images, suggestions, and representations of her experiences at that time, writes Plutarch. Everything was forbidden to be revealed to the non-initiates. Mysterion, mueo, closing the lips or eyes. Epopteia, looking upon, see. Epoptai, viewers who are different than the mystai. And the deicnumena, things shown. The sacred objects shown to the initiate in Eleusis. To say nothing yet about the specificity of lightness and sudden enlightenment, elampsis. Many Eleusinian inscriptions have the formula hiera phainein, like that of Hierophantes, who, I quote, displayed the mysteries for the two goddesses by the sanctuary of Deo. The climax of the mysteric ritual was the revelation of the hiera that were carefully kept in the Anactoron. The city honored Hierophant, who, during the attack of the Kostobots, the Sarmatian tribe, around 170 of our era, I quote, saved undefiled the secret objects for the Kekropidae. In the Telesterion, there was certainly a revelation of grains that everybody knew as being Demeter's gift. Then, Varro says that many things are transmitted in her, Ceres, mysteries, which only refer to the discovery of fruits. And the heresiologist Hippolytus is even more explicit when he evokes the epopteia. The Athenians, while initiating people into the Eleusinian rites, likewise display to those who are being admitted to the highest grade at these mysteries the mighty and marvelous and most perfect secret suitable for one initiated into the highest stage, an air of grain in silence repeat. Initiations that are the main stage of the mystery ceremonies are deeply related to visions that images of mysteries might try to express, like the cloaking of Isis initiates figure out their sacred knowledge, according to Plutarch. As though within a casket, kiste, they cloak them with secrecy, thus giving intimations, some dark and shadowy, some clear and bright, of their concepts about the gods, intimations of the same sort as are clearly evidenced in the wearing of the sacred garb. In 1905, Franz Cumont set a concept of mystery cults that is still alive, though decisive re-examinations. Cumont's categorization of Oriental religions had mystery as a common core. The great Belgian master joined all the deities of these religions in a coherent religious category, sharing the same features: their cosmic power, able to save the humans, the privileged relationship with them for those who were initiated and got access to special revelations, and finally, a new life, hic et post-mortem, protecting them after the initiation. Cumont displayed a mystic image of the mystery religions, which was deconstructed from the 1970s on. Nowadays, as soon as religious experience is at stake, cognitivist theories might help for understanding these sensorial and psychological experiences, as far as they focus on mental processes at work during them: acquisition, memorization, uses, transformation, and transformation. Greek authors who argued about mystic experiences related them to a specific kind of knowledge, gnosis, that is not reached through a didactic or dialectic process, but as a sudden and immediate acquisition, exeiphness in Greek, a kind of illumination that impresses tupoumenos, in the word of Aristotle. 10 years ago, Hugh Bowden followed this global perspective in his Mystery Cults of the Ancient World, while investigating the kind of knowledge provided by mystery rituals. Mysteries were indeed occasional rituals, weighted with a heavy emotional dimension that impressed memory, the most frightening and the most joyful in an inscription at Eleusis, or at a Retter Sopater, I came out of the mystery hall feeling like a stranger to myself. Emotions felt during the terrifying rituals of the initiation, if one follows the philosophical tradition, are analyzed through the model of traumatic experiences, as we shall see on some Italian frescoes later on. Christian authors like Clement of Alexandria, in his long polemical development on pagan mysteries, stressed on this emotional dimension, linking it with tragic myth. And you'll see that all these starting remarks are important to understand how images were used to find out what are mysteries. The issue of depiction and visual evocations of mysteries and initiatory experiences was mainly addressed to Dionysiac, Isiac, and Mithraic cults because they have a large corpus of visual experience, evidence, and specific to Mithras, because from the beginning of the Mithraic studies, in lack of texts, Franz Cumont tried to reconstruct this religion, as he called it, on the basis of images. Cumont's method consisted in reading images as illustrations, thus as explicit testimonies. in French, of course, he spoke French, nous ne connaissons guère ces traditions épiques, c'est-à-dire that is those of the mysteries doctrine, que par les monuments qui leur servaient d'illustration. Cummon asked images to reveal what he did not find in texts, explicit attestations of mysteries, their rituals, their doctrines, and their liturgy in general. He considered that reliefs narrated the myths, envisioned as a Mazdaean religious system, since he considered Mithraism as a Roman form of Mazdaism. So he considered that reliefs related the myth. Although this conception is more or less abandoned today, the question of relationships between myth, rite, and images remains valid, and it crosses, in my opinion, the topic of this conference. The trend of reading images as straightforward evidence remained dominant after him. As we shall see with Martin Vermasseren, notwithstanding major re-examinations of what Cummon called Oriental religions, more recently, Robert Turcan was right in Cummon's line when envisioning Mithraic images as, I quote, de véritables histoires saintes en images, with a Christian-like flavor in his wording. Yet, images cannot be read as if they were mere products of a system of faith, like in modern Catholicism. And as the image would embrace its meaning and display a literal illustrations of the rituals or religious thinking, and it is not proper to Mithraic images. As Cummon used them when he reconstructed the doctrine of Mithraic studies. Représenter sur la pierre non seulement les divinités, mais la cosmogonie des mystères et les épisodes de la légende de Mithra, jusqu'à l'immolation suprême du taureau. Iconic figurations do not replicate reality, neither do photographs. They are a visual construct telling an intellectual, speculative, or imaginative discourse on this reality, which is thus shaped by the cultural environment also. A visual discourse uses various elements that compose an image as many signs that build systems of meanings, proceeding through selection and assemblage of visual elements. Images can convey messages on various fields. Ritual experience, ritual space, they contribute to build, doctrine, if any, conception of the divine. Images are, therefore, documents that create their own significations. They have their own logic and expressivity, and they display a polyvalent semantic system similar to that of the texts. They show what their producers considered both worthy to be shown and able to be viewed for mysteries. On their side, viewers see images with their own cultural and imaginative background, and their viewing contributes also to build the image's meaning, as we notice in the historiography. Being signs or attributes, visual attributes, with a whole range of possible values, the elements whose arrangement constitutes the image indicate or suggest semi-name in Greek and allude to ainisomai in Greek or ainitomai, more than they depict, figure, display. Such a perspective fits the way how ancient authors considered narratives on mysteries and myths. Mysteries and myths concerning the gods speak in riddles, in Plotinus' words. 1 century later, Lucianus of Samosata had Zeus himself advocating for aenigmata revealed to initiates during Mysteria, after Momos had mocked the zoomorphic Egyptian gods. Still, at the beginning of the 4th century, the Christian Eusebius of Caesarea conveys this widely shared conception. Hence, naturally, in all cities and villages, according to the narratives of these ancient authors, initiatory rites and mysteries of the gods corresponding to the mythical tales of the past have been handed down by tradition. Yet, we cannot consider that any depiction of myth conveys a mysteric meaning or attest to mysteric rites, as it is surmised, for instance, by the editors of the mosaic of the house of Dionysos in Sepphoris in Galilee. It might be that specific objects play the role of semiotic markers foretelling mysteries in images. We already crossed the kiste basket. Indeed, images of kistai, torches, wheat, and other objects related to the cult of Demeter and other ceremonial procedures were publicly displayed on the Doric triglyphs and metopes of the Protyron of the Lesser Propylaea and on the calatos of the Caryatides. They became visual markers for mysteries, although they do not depict mysteries. They say there is a mystery cult. They attest to a fact. They became visual markers for mysteries in a Dionysiac context also, and as in the torches engraved on 2 Taurobolic altars of Phlia near Athens at the end of the 4th century. The Eleusinian formula reported by Clement of Alexandria and so frequently quoted by scholars, I fasted, I drank the kykeon, I have taken from the kiste, I worked and deposited in the calatos, and from the basket to the chest. This formula points towards some kind of manipulation of these sacred objects by the Mystai, though we know nothing about that. Being considered as markers of mysteries, they bear the risk to be overinterpreted, when they are depicted on civic coins, for instance, and taken as a proof of actual mysteries in the city. One may question also the meaning of the kistai in Isiac contexts, as far as it is not an Egyptian traditional object. Being a marker of mystery in Eleusinian and Dionysiac context, it might have been borrowed by the Isiacs of the Greco-Roman world, not as a ritual symbol, but in order to give a mysteric image of their cult, and thus vest with respectability a foreign and new cult. And the question has to be asked because there is a great problem about documentation of eventual Isiac mysteries. These methodological warnings being set, I can proceed now to a special case study, images of initiations in the Mithraic cult. From the 70s onwards, in the wake of Roger Beck and Richard Gordon, a double semiotic and astronomical reading of Mithraic iconography was developed. I just mentioned these images of the Mithraic tauroctony as a reminder, starting in the 80s in Rome with 2 verses of statues, 20 years before the first known relief dedicated to Mithras by Alcimus. I shall leave these tauroctony reliefs out of my today presentation as far as we ignore what ritual use was made of these iconographic programs. I chose to focus my remarks on images of initiation. They are not numerous and were all found within Mithraea, so they are in situ. That means they were intending for the members of the groups for initiated insiders. They cover the walls of the meeting room with benches, or of a special room, thus Vermasseren's hypothesis that there was a room dedicated to initiations in the Mitraeum of Santa Prisca, but it cannot be controlled for other smaller Mitraeum. Admittedly, it is delicate to make hypotheses about the functions of these frescoes. A memorial one, a didactic one, or what? Up to the 70s, depictions of initiation scenes came from the frescoes of two Mithraea, Santa Prisca on the Aventine in Rome and Santa Maria Capua Vetere in Capua. Two major discoveries followed, and you have all the references. Two major discoveries follows, an adorned crater in Mainz in Germany with a snake, and the frescoes of the Mitraeum of Caesarea Maritima in Roman Palestine. Reading the Capuan frescoes, Martin Vermasseren envisioned depictions of possibly experienced processes during the initiation ceremony that rejoice today's scholars with a cognitivist approach. Vermasseren could rely for that reading of the frescoes on ancient testimonies asserting an organic link between mysteries and allegory. For instance, the writer Demetrius of Phaleron stated, "This is why mysteries are revealed in allegories, to inspire the shuddering and awe associating with darkness and night. In fact, allegory is not unlike darkness and night." Vermasseren relied also on texts connected to Eleusis in the majority. Thus, he postulated the pervasiveness of the Eleusinian model in Mithraea, like Jan Bremer in his recent initiation into the mysteries in ancient words. But this point has to be thought further, and we can discuss about it later on. Among these texts, allegorically saying the mysteries and the experience of the mystery is the famous fragment of Plutarch evoking the Eleusinian great mysteries as a route with steps from extreme suffering to beatitude. The soul suffers as do those who have been initiated into the great mysteries. That is why the words and the actions of dying and performing rituals, teleton, teleistai, resemble each other. At first, there was wanderings and exhausting walks and unfilled and unclear journeys. Before the end come all terrible things, terror and trembling and sweet and awe. But after this, a marvelous light appears, and pure spaces and meadows receive, with voices and choirs, and the solemnity of sacred utterances and holy spectacles. Vermasseren argued that the frescoes were actual representations of these processes experienced by the initiates. He identified the successive stages of an initiatory scenario going from the terrific up to the paradise, made of various experiences of symbolic death and renaissance. These stages were expressed through gestures construing opposite categories, able to figure out what Walter Burkhardt called the change of mind, the metanoia, following a peculiar experience. You can see on the screen the opposition, these couples between nude candidate to initiation versus ritual agents already initiated who are vested. For example, here, nude vested, vested nude, and here the same. So, nude vested, candidate kneeling and lying versus ritual agents standing. It's easy to see it here or here. Candidate powerless facing armed figures, like here, an object which is supposed to be an arm, but it's not very clear. Candidate with eyes covered before being discovered in order to evoke blindness before illumination, as said in texts. So, here and here. He called also for Christian texts for deciphering the scenes, and mainly on the crown of Tertullian. I quote Vermaseren. The well-known passage from Tertullian's De Corona concerning the initiation of the miles may be quoted as an illustration of the scene at Capua. Tertullian does not tell us who offers the crown to the miles. This act is compared to martyrdom, in which, again, it is the sword that confers the crown. And you have the text of Tertullian down. Some soldiers of Mithra, who at his initiation in the gloomy cavern in the camp, it may well be said of darkness, when at the sword's point a crown, what could be the sword? But there's no crown. When at the sword's point a crown is presented to him, as though in mimicry of martyrdom. That's the reason why he has to imagine the crown, which is not on the fresco, and thereupon put upon his head, is admonished to resist and cast it off, and if you like, transfer it to his shoulder, saying that Mithras is his crown. And thenceforth he is never crowned, and he has that for a mark to show who he is, if anywhere he be subjected to trial in respect to his religion. And you see here the model of martyrs, of course. And he is at once believed to be a soldier of Mithras if he throws the crown away, if he says that in his God he has this crown. The problem is that there is no clear evidence of a crown on any of the frescoes. The Crater of Mainz was read by his editors according to the same lines, although the visual choices are different for the three figures. Yet we see also a frightening episode lived by the initiant, the shuddering awe associated with darkness and night, as Demetrius said. The initiant is in the middle. You have the vase on the left, and the two details on the same in the same organization. So the initiant is in the middle. He is threatened to death by the archer on the left, and here we see the archer, while the pater, father, heads the ritual on the right. There is a frightening zone which is on the left, yet the initiant and the pater do not look like having a traumatic experience. Deciphered through the lenses of ancient texts evoking terrifying experiences, these images are interpreted as picturing successive and effective steps of Mithraic initiation. 2 years ago were finally published the badly preserved frescoes of the Mithraeum of Caesarea Maritima in Syria, Palestine. They were painted on the wall of the meeting room. These frescoes offer a good case study for evoking the methodological problems linked with the reading of this kind of evidence through the lenses of a model, either Eleusinian or Christian. The archaeologists who published the finds modeled their deciphering of the frescoes upon the Roman and Capuan interpretations. Yet we already noticed how deeply these interpretations of Rome and Capu are interpretations based on a literary corpus, thus changing according to the texts that are chosen. Secondly, such a reading postulates that there did exist a standardized iconographic visual program, as they say, in all Mitréens, with a prescriptive authority like in a sort of centralized church. Although the Toroctony reliefs show an amazing uniformity beside details, we know that Mithraic communities were atomized groups within which the role of the father was probably important. The recently discovered Mitraeum in Awarte, still in the Near East, with an original Persian inspiration, confirms the point. For Caesarea, the authors identify the fresco as displaying a chronological narrative of the initiation of the Leoness, the first of the high grades, according to Richard Gordon. They read, from left to right, they read the three sequences through the initiatory model of an extreme near-death experience, provoking the transformation of the initiates, although the way how they design the fresco on the upper part do not convey such an atmosphere. The first scene, and you see why I show you the drawing, because the frescoes could be read, but only under special lightnings, and we have the lightnings on the book. In the book, I couldn't show to you all the different situations. So the first scene, the first panel, on the left, picture a procession with two figures, one standing and one kneeling, bringing offerings for the ritual meal, a bread and a cock. This scene has a parallel in a fresco at Santa Prisca, depicting a similar procession. We cannot consider, as they write on page 44, you have it here, we cannot consider, as they wrote on page 44, that the scene belongs to an initiation ritual. Ritual meals, shown in Santa Prisca, for instance, were a regular meeting occasion of Mithraic groups without initiation. I mean, differently to the time of initiation. At Santa Prisca, the procession takes place when the lions are acclaimed, but we do not know if this procession and acclamation publicizes the end of an initiatory ritual or just a promotion to a higher grade, since we do not know yet if there were only one or various initiations. Moreover, the parallel of the festival with mysteries at Andania in Messenia, dated to the 1st century BC, 1st century AD, well known thanks to a rather long and detailed inscription, invites to distinguish the different stages and the different positions of the mystery or initiates. The second panel, panel B, picture a man standing, vested of oriental pants and a short cloak, who delivers something to a man in front of him with a kind of, who delivers something to a man who is in front of him, and he delivers it with a kind of torch, or a stick, possibly a torch. The man who is kneeling is nude, except a short cloak on his shoulders. He is kneeling and receives what is given in his hands. I guess that nudity and the kneeling position prompted the editors to model their reading and method on that of Vermasseren of the Capuan Mithraeum, although the context of the scene is quite different. They search for texts giving an illustration to images. So they call either for Tertullian in an anti-Gnostic treatise, and in that case they argue for a fire test, so the man would receive fire in the hands. That is traumatic indeed. Or they call to the Neoplatonic porphyry on the cave of the nymphs, evoking a purificatory rite with honey, which is less traumatic. In both hypotheses, the experience figured out in the image does not look like a traumatic one, while this is the main hermeneutic line of the editors. Finally, the last panel on the right displays the dexiosis between Sol in divine nudity and Mithra, a motif that is frequently depicted on reliefs as well, and you have one of them on the right. The editor dramatized it, the scene, as a blood pact. And for doing that, they need to borrow an avestic feature of Mithra as god of faith. I quote them, the inclusion of this scene among the other images indicates that the blood pact was part of this specific ceremony, a conclusion to the rites sealing the transition of the mustes with a sacred oath to the god or cult father. Whatever could be this enigmatic transition of the mustes, again, the atmosphere, which is so common in the reliefs, does not smell the near-death experience of the general model they try to follow. More, in my opinion, more than a chronological scenario of initiation, as it is proposed by the authors, the ensemble joins three different ways of designing the religious group through a visual language. The ritual way, with the procession, the initiation, so it is an initiatory cult with a central gift, with no special terrific ambience, something intransmitted, and the verb tradere in Latin is very common in the inscriptions of Mithraic devotees. And the third way of expressing the group, the myths, with the dexiosis. It seems to be that these reflections demonstrate how images of mysteries, and the more so of initiation, are first difficult to identify and then delicate to interpret. Even after the visual turn, the prevailing method for deciphering them consists of calling for texts for supporting the reading of images. And in that case, the choice of the text is very important. Yet, these texts are of two kinds. Either they are philosophical texts, which speak in riddles, as Plotinus said, and they are of late date for some of them. Or they are Christian texts, apologetic and polemical, because the fathers considered that mystery cults were the major concurrent to Christianity, which has its own mysterion. Thus, mysteries were for fathers imposture. We do not know how Christian authors were informed about pagan mysteries, as far as there was a silence ban. Even if they got first-hand information, it is clear, and we saw it for Tertullian, for instance, it is clear that they biased the picture because of their ideological goals, as we noticed with the chapters of the Tertullian's De Corona. It is thus more cautious and modest to avoid starting with the uniform model and to read images according to their own codes. I thank you very much.